Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, digging into this Alabama Crimson Tide team and kind of a little bit of a public service announcement. Now, I don't know, I didn't know we'd have to make this public service announcement, but do not count out this Alabama team quite yet. I want to talk about what we saw in that Ole Miss game, specifically in the second half, that has us thinking like this Alabama team is still dangerous. You look across the SEC, how many teams are scaring you? Like, not many. This Alabama team, yes, is going through some growing pains. I think they're ironing a lot of those things out. This is still a team that with a legit shot to win the SEC, get into the college football playoffs, and win a national championship. Want to get into what we've seen from this team. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. The support you guys have shown the boys, over 9,000 subscribers. That's just an insane number. So if you guys do enjoy the content, you want to support the fellas, consider subscribing to the channel. Dale, I'm going to kick this one off to you. This Alabama team, what we saw from them specifically in that second half of that Ole Miss game, how are we feeling about this group?
I mean, frankly, if this offense can just play in a similar way they played in that second half, this defense, this is a national championship defense.
100%.
This defense is so good. And frankly, it starts and stops with Dallas Turner, who in my mind might be the best defensive player in football. And the fact that we don't talk about him like we talked about Will Anderson, I find incredible because he is that dominant. He's that good in the pass rush, and he plays the run very well. And he makes like those impact plays that change football games. Honestly, I think a lot of us were like, we wanted to talk a little bit like Harold Perkins and some of these other guys who kind of came on the scene a little bit. But I think that came at the expense of Dallas Turner. I mean, he's still there and he's still playing so well and very disruptive for this.
And we like knew Dallas Turner was a solid player, but I do agree, he is emerging, kind of like reminding people like why he's one of the best players in college football. But outside of that, especially against this Ole Miss team, I mean, Ole Miss could not block Alabama. That defensive line whooped up on Ole Miss. Like outside of that first drive, I mean, it was a dominant performance. Still, I know you have a lot of takes on this defensive line and how you saw them play against Ole Miss. Let's hear him here.
I mean, what I'm kind of seeing is I think you might have like defensive tackles who are playing at the level of what Alabama was having in like 2019 and 2018 and 17 and through 15, essentially. Like those years when they had incredible defensive tackles who were just dominating football games. I think we all knew Jaheim Otis was going to play really well. I mean, as a true freshman, he was pretty dominant. He's obviously he's kind of carried on where he left off. But to me, it's guys like Tim Keenan and Tim Smith, who, especially Tim Keenan, who's playing at an incredibly high level, is making a ton of plays against Alabama or Ole Miss, I should say, not just being space eaters, but being ultra disruptive guys who can rush the passer and make TFLs like that. I don't think we've seen that from Alabama in the way we're seeing it right now in a long time. And to me, that's a huge part of what's driving.
When you combine an edge rusher like Chris Braswell, Dallas Turner, and then you have guys on the inside who are game wreckers like you just mentioned, like that's when a defense, especially that front seven, gets really dangerous. And what excites me even more is I think this secondary, and you knew Malachi Moore, I mean, I think that's Brian Branch 2.0. Kool-Aid McKinstry, we know he's a top 10 NFL draft pick. You're seeing the other guys in that room step up in a massive way, right? You had a lot of question marks about who's playing cornerback out or opposite of Kool-Aid McKinstry. You bring in a guy like Trey Amos, Terry Arnold emerging as another lockdown cornerback. True freshman Caleb Downs continues to take those steps. I mean, tell me a more impressive true freshman in America than Caleb Downs. Zachariah Branch on the West Coast gets all the attention. Caleb Downs is being a dog back there. Jalen Key's really come together in the transfer portal. You combine a front seven that Alabama has with a secondary that's this elite and playing at this high of a level. This defense, I don't see many teams in the SEC scoring on this defense.
And honestly, like hats off these Alabama coaches because you talk about like development.
Yeah.
I mean, a guy like Terry Arnold, I think probably did take some criticism from the Bama fans, and he had some penalties and certainly wasn't playing at an incredibly high level last year. I mean, you look at some of the things he's doing now, not really being too handsy with wide receivers, getting his hands on the football, being sticky with guys, taking the football away, tackling in space. I mean, he's cranked his level way up. I mean, I think it's huge to have Caleb Downs come in when you lose that many guys in the secondary, especially at that safety spot. You kind of need someone to step up, and Caleb Downs, a true freshman, as you mentioned, just sliding right in there. And you knew he had the physical traits to do it. If you watched him in high school, you knew that. But I mean, just the fact that they can trust him back there and he's not making the mistakes. And he's not, because frankly, if he was, he wouldn't be playing.
And that's what's so impressive with Caleb Downs. And you mentioned it. Like, you knew, if you follow recruiting, like, Caleb Downs was that guy. That being said, like, you don't see blown coverages. You don't see him missing tackles, missing assignments. How polished he is for a true freshman. You've seen Nick Saban, like, when he gets asked about Caleb Downs, and his eyes don't light up much. Like, they light up, say, yeah, he's one of the good ones. And he's going to be a really special player. And the most exciting part is, like, this secondary, with a couple new faces, true freshmen added in, like, it's only going to get better as the season goes on. Dill, I want to switch over to the offensive side of the ball.
Before we go to the offensive side of the ball, we got to talk a little Deontay Lawson.
Yeah,
we talk about guys who they needed to step up and play big-time football. I mean, that inside linebacker position was good with him and Toto last year, but Deontay Lawson's playing at a considerably higher level, in my opinion, than what Toto was playing at last year, in just the athletic upside, and he's playing more physical. He's taking blocks on harder. Like, we knew he could run. We knew he could play in space, but now he's playing like that true heavy middle linebacker. And then you got Tresman Marshall running with him. And frankly, Jahad Campbell too, who are a really solid, like, Robin to his Batman. But Deontay Lawson, to me, when he gets back healthy and it comes back, plays the way he's playing, like, he's reformed this defense, because now they have that guy, like, again, like some of those linebackers they've had in the past who are really, really good. I feel like he is right up there with those guys. He's made huge strides.
I don't want to, like, Henry Toto is a very good linebacker for Alabama. Don't get me wrong. I think he lacked, like, some of those physical traits. The reason he played so much, pretty much never came off the field, was, he was the general of that defense. Deontay Lawson, Jahad Campbell, from an athletic standpoint, like, they have a much, much higher ceiling. And these guys didn't play much because Henry Toto did not come off the field last year. You're going to see, again, add that to the list of, like, this group. I feel like people forget the fact that teams can get better through September to late November. And so, like, the unit you saw maybe early on in the season, it's not going to be the same unit that you see late October, early November.
Even, like, I imagine people think, like, oh, Texas scored a lot on them. If you look at the first three quarters of that game, they were nails. They only given up 13 points. And frankly, Ewers really wasn't picking them apart at all, I wouldn't say.
And when they got beat, I'll say this, after going back and watching the film, sorry to cut you off, like, when they did get beat, that was Quinn Ewers making really good throws. Like, that was just good on good. There was, like, a certain element of, this defense is not that bad. It was just Alabama or Texas, Quinn Ewers, really talented team they have down in Austin. Like, they just played really good football at some of those
turnovers put them in a horrible spot too. So that's, like, it wasn't just the defense. To turn the ball over like they did, especially in the back half of that game, like, those are big turnovers that just, again, they changed the dynamics of the football game. But when Texas was playing, like, that was evenly matched right through. Just the fourth quarter, it got away from them. But that defense, I didn't really come away thinking, like, oh, man, this defense isn't the truth, because I still think it very much.
100%. I feel like there's a lot of box score watchers, and probably a lot of people watch that game. But if you go back and watch it, because when I watched it on the second, third run, like, that, the Alabama defense looked really, really solid. And again, that's a high-powered Texas offense. Still, most people want to talk about the offense. That is, as much as we just spent 8 minutes talking defense, if Alabama does something special, this offense, it's not going to be like you saw with some of the previous offenses. It's going to look different. That being said, what you saw in the second half of that Ole Miss game, if Alabama can put that type of offense out consistently on the opposite of a defense that's as smothering and as dominant as I think that defense is, that's the recipe for Alabama doing something special in 2023.
And honestly, it's going to be about Caden Proctor and Tyler Booker playing the way they played in that second half of that game, because
reaching their potential.
Honestly, the right side of the line's been pretty solid for the most part, but that side, J.C. Latham's really good. I think you're solid at the center and right guard spot, but those guys maybe don't quite have the talent that the two on the left have, because, like,
J.C. Latham's got to be up there.
J.C. Latham's right up there with him, and he's playing at that level, but, like, the rest of that line really isn't. Caden Proctor and Tyler Booker, you probably argue they're right up there with Latham, especially Caden Proctor, because when you see Caden Proctor playing the way he should be playing, he's dominant. And same with Booker. Like, when they're playing the game they want to play, they're being physical, they're being athletic, they're doing what essentially they need to do, where they need to run the ball for 4 yards pretty much every time they touch it. And if they can do that like they were doing against Ole Miss in the second half, this offense can be good enough. It's not ever going to be what it was with Bryce Young, because they just don't have that at the quarterback spot. But I think what Jalen Milroe can do, especially hitting the deep ball and running a little bit on his own, I think they can be good enough to win in frankly, a year where I don't think you have a real juggernaut.
Well, okay, so the offensive line completely agree. And I do think, I mean, again, Tyler Booker's true sophomore, Caden Proctor's a true freshman. Like, it's rare to see guys that young play at that level. And if they continue to get better, which I fully think they will, they're young guys. Like that Alabama offensive line, I think you saw kind of put it together. I want to talk a little bit more about the quarterback play. And I feel like a conversation that's missing and another kind of piece of evidence why I think this Alabama team continues to make improvements. You got a new OC, you got a new starting quarterback. They're still trying to figure out like what fits Jalen Milroe the best. And there is an element of you got to look at what you got in the quarterback room and say, hey, how can we put this quarterback in the best spots? It didn't really matter what you called last year with Bryce Young. He was going to figure it out. Jalen Milroe, different quarterback. And I think you're starting to see them put Jalen Milroe in better spots where, hey, you can use your physical ability, you can use what you're good at and run that offense around him. Pushing the ball down the field is one of them. These wide receivers, I think, are actually really, really good once they start clicking a little bit. Like, if you see Tommy Reese and Jalen Milroe kind of get more on the same page, it's another reason you're going to see this offense get a little bit better.
Well, and frankly, what Alabama just needs to avoid is being in 3rd and 5+. Because when they're in 3rd and 5+, that's just not a good position for what Jalen Milroe can do. I mean, he honestly, like, he's fine throwing the ball short. He doesn't really miss like screens or do anything crazy with that. And he's pretty good hitting the deep ball, honestly, what you mentioned. But the intermediate pass game just really hasn't been there all year. So again, that's to me like why they need to be able to run the ball for four plus pretty much every time.
I went up first and second down.
Because then, honestly, you get into positions where you can take a play action shot or you can do some different things that, again, Jalen Milroe's shown he can do. Yeah, he really does throw the deep ball well. And you see Jermaine Burton, again, talking about a guy who's really improved, a guy who just looks like he's playing at a different level. The top end speed looks like it might be a little different. He's getting behind defenses. Isaiah Bond, if you listen to his channel, you know I think he is the truth. Jalen Hale stepping up, playing really good ball against Ole Miss. He's making the one play. Like, they have enough talent at wideout. They need to be able to stay on schedule. And then I think they got to take their play action shots, and that's probably where the bulk of the production is going to be. But I will say, I am interested to see, like, can they get these guys like some touches in space, either in screens or some other way? Because I feel like we haven't really seen a whole lot of that yet this year.
Yeah, I would like to see that because I feel like no one's really talking about the Alabama wide receivers because the passing game just like hasn't really hit its stride. I don't think that means these Alabama wide receivers aren't good. Like, I think you got some real playmakers. You just got to get them those chances to be playmakers. Though we're going to learn about this team. I think we all agree, like, this Alabama team is going to consistently get better over the course of the season. I can't wait to see what the final product is when you get into mid-October.
I mean, they just got to play that physical style they played in the second half. Their tight ends were playing physical. Their left side of the offense line is playing really physical. And that looked like the type of unit they needed. I think they have that in them. I think the running backs are very good. I love Jace McClellan personally. I think this unit's good enough given that the defense is great. I mean, again, not going to be super explosive, but I think they need good
look
enough.
Different, but it definitely is still a recipe to work. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Wanted to take some time just talk about this Alabama team. Let you guys know that, hey, do not count Nick Saban and the fellas out yet. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.